Learning of Black Gemara. Today's daf is daf Memhei Amar Aleph. It's the fifth. It's Thursday, the fifth day of Chalamoid. Fourth day of Chalamoid. The Gemara is daf Memhei Amar Aleph. In the middle of the page, we're having a discussion. If a goy marries a Yiddish woman, what is the status of the child? Whether we treat the child as if it's a mamzer, or whether we treat the child as if it's a Yisrael, and the child might be a pogum. We brought a kavachemer when a pogum, disqualified, tainted, that if a girl, she cannot marry a kohen. So we're up to the Gemara here in the middle of the page, where Rabbi Yosef lists a number of rabbanim who argue. Some will hold that it's a mamzer, and some will hold the child is kosher. So we'll go to the Gemara. The last few lines, Rabbi Yosef, about 25 lines at the top of the page. Hello, Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, Rebbe, it is Rebbe. The chi osa Rebbe. Forget about all these different names. The fact that you have more people, less people, make no difference. It's because Rebbe, who wants to say that the child actually is a mamzer. They said the name of Rabbeinu. Amru, they say, of the mamzer. For goy, or an eved has relations with a Yiddish woman, the child is a mamzer. Rabbi Shimon Levi disagrees. He said the child is kosher, but avlad mekulkul. He uses the expression that the child is flawed. The man, mekulkul to who? Ilay melakol. The child is considered a mamzer, cannot marry anybody. Rabbi Shimon himself said the child is kosher. El lakuna, disqualified from kuna. Means a girl, she cannot marry a kohen. And also, what do you mean by posla? As we'll see, the kulu amaroi, the machshere, all of the amaroi who make a kosher, moidu agree, shavlad pogum lakuna. The child is disqualified from kuna. How do I know that? The kalvachemer from almana. Madach almana the kohen gadol. A widow marrying a kohen gadol is forbidden. Is considered a very limited issa. She'ein yisur shabakol. Nobody else shares that avera. Yet, but not pogum. No one else has the issa of marrying a widow. Yet her child is tainted. Izu, she yisur shabakol. Someone the issa is equal to everyone. It's a much more stringent aveda. Ainadin surely should be not pogum. The child is tainted. You're going to ask me, Mala, Monica, and Godels, can he ask by a widow? She herself now is disqualified. Her husband dies. She cannot marry any kohen. So, Hachanami here too. Kivan Shenivla, because she had relations, Posla to a guy, Posla, it disqualifies her. What do you mean disqualifies her? That she cannot eat trum anymore. If her husband dies, whatever, she cannot go back to her family and to eat truma. Surely she cannot marry a kohen either. How do you know I know if a goy or an eved has relations with a kohenis it disqualifies this woman if she's a kohenis. It disqualifies her from eating truma going back home, or a Levia Yisraelis as well. As we said before, cannot marry a kohen. Or, for example, they were married to a kohen and they had children. As long as even their husband died, they can continue eating truma. But if they had relations with a goy, they can no longer eat truma. How do I know that? You know, it says bas kohen kisiya. See it from like kedushin, almana, gerusha. Mish shlamani gerushin, but anyone that has the laws of a widow, of a divorcee, fine. Then the din is she can go back to her family if she has no children and eat from truma. Yotzu, the exception is a slave or an eved that has no almanas and no gedishin. She is disqualified from going back to her family. Because there's no kedushin there. You see, it sounds like they can get married, but a goy, you cannot get married. So my chazir, the son of Dimi, he tells Rabbi Yosef, why do you decide to rule like Rabbi Dimi, the child of Mamzer? Smeicha the Rabbi, the Chiyasa, Rabbi, Amra Nosan, Rabbi Yehuda, Hanasi Moidim Bolateda, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, that Rabbi Nosan and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi both say that it's mutter. Man Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi. Who Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is Rabbi. So it's clear to me that he holds that Rabbi is actually matir. Says the child is kosher. In fact, Rav also said that is mutter. Now, who doesn't come to Rav? Somebody came for Rav. Somebody came over to Rav and said, "Tell me, a goy who marries a Yiddish or an Eved, who marries a Yiddish woman, what's the status of the child?" Amalei said, "I'm not kosher. The child is kosher." Amalei said, "Fine. Well, I am the product of that." Obviously, he was a Talmud Chacham. So he said, if you really believe that I'm kosher, havli bartech. I would like to have a shidduch with your daughter. So Rav said to him, look, there's no way in the world I'll let you marry my daughter. Omar Simi Bachil Rav. So Rav's first cousin said to him, Amri Inchi, people will say that Gamla b'modai, the camel in Modai, Akavarok, that dances within a tight circle. That in other words, we're far away. You say things you don't mean. Because why? He said, "Ho kava." Here is the here's a small area of gamla. Here's a camel. Ho mud. Here's mother. And you're not dancing. It was an analogy trying to say, if you really believe that the child of a union of a goy and a Yiddish woman is kosher, then why don't you let him marry your daughter? He's a big Talmud Chacham. Amalei said, I've said to him, if this person would be as great as Yeshua ben Nun, I'd never let her marry my daughter. Amalei, his cousin said to him, if he would be like Yeshua ben Nun, that if you don't give him a daughter, plenty of other girls out there would be happy to marry him. Hi, this person, who's, because his father was a guy, if you're not going to accept his shidduch, not everybody else, they'll start saying Rav never meant what he said. It's just academic. But when it comes to a poil, he would never let his daughter marry the son of a guy. The guy refused to leave Rav until he accepts the shidduch. Rav gave a look with his eyes, and he died. It's highly questionable why he deserved to die, even though he's pestering Rav. Unless by pestering Rav, he was really casting aspersions on Rav's halachas, whether it was genuine. And this was therefore undermined Rav's credibility as being the Pesach Hadoir. When it comes to Yisurim, the halach is always like Rav. And therefore Rav felt that in order to ensure that the halacha will follow in all other dinim, he said, he decided he has to eliminate this person. Anyway, it continues. Ras also permitted this child of a father a goy and a mother yid. Rav Yehuda himself also was mat. The came to Yehuda. He told this fellow came to look. I'm looking for shidduch. He said to him, "Zil itmar." He said to him like following. He said, "Go to another city that no one knows the yichus, and if you're a Talmud Chacham, they'll be happy to find the best shidduch for you. You want to stay in this town? You'll have to marry somebody else like you. His father was a guy, and mother was a yid." When it came before Rava, Amalei said to him, either you go to exile to another city that nobody knows you, or have to marry a girl who has the same yichus as you, because you have no yichus. And because you have no yichus, nobody's going to want to marry you. It doesn't matter what kind of great Talmud Chacham you are. So the Bnei Mechse, the people of the city of Mechse sent a letter to Rabbah, and asked him the following question: if somebody is half a slave and half free, Abba Bas Yisrael, and he has relations with a Yiddish woman, Mao, what's the what is the status of the child? I don't understand. We just learned Hashta Evid Kuli Amin Kosher. We just said if a slave has relations with a woman, the child is kosher. You can ask me a question if it's half a slave and half free. What the state of the child is? Of course, the child is kosher. Why should it be otherwise? Thank you. So he said, but I'm running. Rabbi Yisrael said, Mara Dishmaitu. Rabbi Yisrael said that the master of this din, that if a goy lives with a Yiddish woman, the child is kosher, man, who is it? Rabbi Yehuda. And Omar Rabbi Yehuda, the same Rabbi Yehuda said, because we just said Rabbi Yehuda said, was matir and said the child was kosher. Same Rabbi Yehuda said, Misha Chetzi Ever Chetzi Mechoyim, Habba Bas Yisrael has a Jewish woman, Oisev Vlad, Ein Le Takona. That child cannot marry a Jewish woman. In other words, the child is a mamzer. So how do you reconcile that? On the one hand, he says an Ebed that has a relation with the Yiddish woman, the child is kosher. On the other hand, he says, but if it's a half Ebed, half free, the child is a mamzer. How can that be worse? Gemara says, Ki Itmod Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is talking about a case. He's going to Kaddish Bas Yisrael. Not that he had a one-night stand with a Yiddish woman and she fell pregnant. He actually married her. The problem is because he's half free, the half free part is a full marriage. And now she's a married woman. And now the half Eved is having relations with a married woman. That's much worse. The Nimtzat Tzad Abdu Shaboy, the half of him that's an Eved is Mishtamish Be'eshes Ish, is also having relations with a married woman. And that's why the child's a mamzer. Says that in itself is not so simple. Because in fact, but Ami Nadoy, the people in the Nadoy, he said, Mashmed Rabbi Yaakov, he said the Divrei HaPaisel, and the people in the Nadoy, he said, the one who says Paisel, the one who said the child's a mamzer, even if there's a free woman, a single woman, child's a mamzer. But the Divrei Machshel, the one who said that if a goy with a Yiddish woman, the child is kosher, the Machshel Afilu Beishes Ish. If a goy has relations with a married woman, the child is not a mamzer. And he has a child with her. While she's a married woman, the child is not a mamzer. And why not? They're both learn from the same pasuk. How do you know all the laws on mamzer? Because the pasuk I mentioned, not marry the wife of his father. And the next pasuk says, Lo Yovim mamzer. So the question is, what exactly is the comparison or the paradigm of an Ashes of? Man, the apostle, the one who says that it's apostle, sovereign holds, Ashes of, just like an Ashes of. The Lotas Kedushin, obviously, there's no Kedushin at all between the son and the wife of a father. So therefore, and if there's no Kedushin, it's Vlaz Mamzer. So a goy and a Yiddish woman, the child's a Mamzer because there's no Kedushin. The man, the machshir, the one who holds kosher, holds ma ashes of the daily touch kedushin. When do we say as a mamzer that you cannot marry this woman, but other people can? But for others, there is kedushin, so therefore the child might be a mamzer. This negates a goy or an eved to like but in the case of a goy or an eved, but there's no kedushin at all, there's no mamzer whatsoever. So therefore, even by an Ashes Ish, there's no mamzer whatsoever. Elegant Rav Yehuda. So when Rav Yehuda said his thinking, so what's Rav Yehuda's did when he said that a chetzi ever chetzi mechayin, the child is a mamzer, when he holds a full ever, the child is kosher, and it cannot be that he married somebody, and now that half of him is married to this woman, so she's an Ashes Ish, and the other half of an ever is having relations with an Ashes Ish, because Rav Yehuda holds it's not a problem. According to Nadoyan, that's not a problem, because there's no mamzer then. Since there's no kedushin with a goy, even though she's a married woman. That he had relations, this Chetzi Evchon had relations with a married woman. And the problem is that half of him is Tzad Chedes. Tzad Chedes is Chayim Rol Mitzvahs. Tzad Chedes Sheboy Mishtamish Be'eshes Ish. Amar Rabbi said, Amali Rav Gaza said, Ikla Rabbi Yeshua Rav Nasi, Rabbi Yeshua came to our place, Rabbi Uvda, and there was a story, but a single girl, and he said that the child from that with a goy is kosher. But the age is if she's a married woman, and a goy with a married woman possibly says that the child is a mamzer. Amar Rav Shesha said, the Amar Rav Gaza, however, told me just the opposite. Lo Rabbi Yeshua Rav Haba, Rabbi Yeshua Rav Shila Haba. It was not Rabbi Yeshua Bar Oven, it was actually Rabbi Yeshua Bar Zvida. And Ba'achsher. And he said that that was kosher. That even if she's a married woman, the child is not considered a mamzer if it's a goy. Never understood this kind of gemaras, because at first we said Abgaza said that Yesi Bar Oven came to our place and said that if she's a married woman with a goy, the child is a mamzer. Absheza came along and said Abgaza told me there was a Yesi Bar Oven who came. It wasn't Yesi Bar Oven, it was a Yesi Bar Zvida, and he was marching in both. So how do you know that both events didn't happen? How do we know that you didn't have first Rabbi Yeshua Bar Oven come to the place and he said that the child with a goy and a married woman is a mamzer, and Rabbi Yeshua Bar Zvida came along and said the child with a goy and a married woman is kosher? Maybe they both happened. Rabbi said to Ravina, Ikla me when I asked him, which came to our place. And he said, a goy with a Yiddish woman, whether she's single, even if she's a married woman, with a goy, the child is not a mamzer, the child is kosher. A goy or an eved have relation to Bas Yisrael, the child is kosher. Even if she's a married woman with a goy and has a child, the child is not a mamzer, just a pogrom. Talking about this relation of a goy and the Yiddish woman, so the Gemara now talks about, can you give them a position of leadership? Because we learn sometimes melech that kol mesim b'shat should only be kind of a chicha. So what about in the case when the father is a goy and the mother is a yid? Rava Achshel Rav Mori Baruch, who was the daughter of Shmuel, and they were taken captive, and then they came forward, and it really is Mori Barisik, and the goy captured later on decided to become a yid, and Rav appointed him, Umani, push above one of the officers above, even though his father was a guy, before he became a gay. Hi, this person, because the mother was a yid, we'll call him Mikerev Achicha. It more clearly says here that the mother's a yid and the father's a guy, being called Kevin, he was called Kerev Achicha. And by Grippus HaMelech, when they called him brother, and even though his mother was a yid, his father was a guy, and the Gemara says because of the Chanifa, because they tried to, I guess, bribe him in a way, and they weren't genuine, they were punished. And the Lecheda, what did they do wrong if his mother was a yid? So Teza said that Hurdus, Grippus HaMelech was a son of, did not marry a yid at all. He married a goy, only till he did tshuva later. But initially, he married someone who was a yid, and therefore, it wasn't a case of a mother being a yid. Yeah, and then we have a discussion whether a gay can be a dayan, if his mother can a gay be a dayan or not, and only if his mother is a yid can he be a judge. His mother not yid cannot be a judge. Yet we learned other places he could. It's talking about to be a dayan over other gayrim. And the Gemara continues. Avdid Rav Chiya bar Ami, this is an interesting thing. Slave of Rav Chiya bar Ami, decided to table a non-Jewish woman, and he tabled her. Rashi has two pshatim. The first pshat, the one that he prefers, he tabled her as if she was a nida. Now she wasn't even Jewish, but he treated her as if she was Jewish. So when she went to the mikveh for nida, they had no intention to use the mikveh for geras. And yet, you don't need kavana for mikveh for gerus, and therefore the mikveh was good enough for her gerus. Now, even though normally we need witnesses as well, we say you need 3 witnesses at Bezdin for gerus. So Taisa wants to say it's not for the tefillah part, it's for Kabbalah's hamitzvahs. You need a bezdin. But tefillah, you don't need a bezdin. And you don't need kavanah as well. Says he wanted further. Similar story. So they came before I can make her kosher and her daughter. What do you mean? I can say she's a yid, and therefore daughter is kosher. Surely he went to the mikveh for a niddah, and therefore it's good enough for gators as well. The barta, what about the daughter? The eved, haba bas yisrael, havlad kosher. A goy and an eved. Now, now that she's a get, and the eved had relations with her. The eved of Chibarami had relations with her. So goy or an eved, it's a Yiddish woman, and the child is kosher. There was this person who was called Bar Al-Miyasa. They called him the son of a father of Goy. So what? And the mother was not Jewish at the time. She lived as if she was a Yid. She went to the mikveh, and you don't need kavanah for the mikveh, and therefore, good enough. Rashi has a second shot there that means that he converted her because they fell in love, and the basis for the conversion was because she loved him. And Rashi says it can't be because the Gemara concluded that the evidence it's good enough without it, as we discussed in the Machlekes of Yosef and Rashi. Pshatning were there. Anyway, the word continues. The son of a goyish father, he said, he definitely went to the mikveh as a yid for his kenny, and therefore you don't need kavanah to become a Jew. And he suddenly became a Jew automatically. As we said, you don't need a bezin for tefillah, you don't need a bezin for kabbalah and mitzvahs. As Taisa says, if somebody buys a slave from a goy, this slave obviously knew the halachas, that every Kanani is forcibly converted, and they have the status of a Jewish woman. So what this guy did, he jumped into the mikveh, and he had in mind to become a full-fledged Yid, even though the Bezin had no idea of that. He became he jumped in and he decided at the table and had in mind to be a Ben Chayid, in other words, to convert properly. He is converted, and once he's converted, he's totally free. My time, but why is that so? Because he bought him from another guy. What did the other guy actually own in him? A guy does not have the rights over the essence of another person. What he has the rights over his handiwork, his earnings. So that is what he sold to the Yid. Since the guy jumped inside the table to be a Ben Chayden, that automatically canceled any shibud that the Yid bought from the guy. So if you get to the core and you unravel the core, then all the symptoms and the other I guess the tangential things fall apart. Why? Like Rabbi said, Rabbi said, Hegdish, 3 things. And Hegdish, Chametz, and Shivcher Machkividei Shibud. What does that mean? Let's say you took a cow, you made an apoitike. You said, Apoite koi, this is where I'm going to pay my loans with this particular cow. And then you decide to consecrate it for the base of English. What kind of kedusha did you make it? A kedushas haguf, not a kedushas damim, which is only the value. It's actually just a goof. You made the very animal itself holy. And what happens as a result of that is, then the shibud unravels. And then the shibud that ever you had to this lender falls apart. Because since the lender only had the value of it, and now you gave away the essence of the base of English, there's nothing left for the lender to keep. Or, for example, chametz. Chametz for Pesach, he said, this will be for this liquor here, I'm going to pay my loans. And it's sitting by the Yid, comes along at Pesach, and suddenly it becomes Asa. Again, the essence now became Asa, the whole shipment unravels. And the same thing is Shichr, that if you made your slave an apoitike for your friend, and then you decided to free the Evid, There's nothing left for the Eved. Says he went further. Masir Rav Chiza, so you're telling me that the Eved can decide to become a Yid, full-fledged Yid, and he becomes free because you don't own that anymore. The guy never owned it. That was a question. Maisa, the Beluria, there's a story with Beluria Hagiatus. Beluria became a Jewess. Now, as a guy, she owned a number of servants, and now she became a Yid. She had to go ahead and do the whole thing. She couldn't have for now. So her servant jumped in before her, and they converted before she be converted. Because since she was a goy before, while they did it, and she was selling it to herself as a Yid, so therefore they were able to jump in and Megayer fully before. The Fanel, it seems from here, only they did it before she became a Yid. Once she became a Yid, they could no longer do that. So we see that if a Yid buys it, we no longer say that Evan can unravel it. So the question you said before, that if a Yid buys from a Goy, the Evan can go ahead and Megai himself, travel for Geiris, and completely come free. Amar Rav says not a question. But this is a pshat here. If they did it before she became a Yid, even they did this time, they didn't say what the intention was, they're free. Once she became a Yid, the footage, they clearly said that, like Abchom Baguri said before, that if they had a mind to become a Yid, then they are free. Of the stam loy, the stam not. Amar Rav Avia Loishon, when do we say this din Elbe came from a guy himself? From another guy. If the guy himself sells himself, then Kani, then the Yid completely is kind of. And if the guy decides to pay from Kamid, it doesn't help. Because the passage, the Gam ibn Shavim Hagorim from the local citizens around you. You should buy Atem Kainim Mehem, but Heim Kainim Mekem. You buy from them, but they shouldn't buy from you. Loi Heim Kainim is them, and nor do they buy from each other. Loi Heim Kainim Mekem, nor do they buy from you. Lamai. What are we talking about? That they cannot buy just for his handiwork and his earnings. Why can't the guy hire a Yid for his Maisi Yadav? In fact, it's not possible. We see if you sell to a guy, what you're doing is undermining, you're taking him out of his family. So you could sell a Yid to a guy. Talking about you cannot sell the essence of the guy. The Torah says, "Atem koinim mehem afil gufei," and the Torah says that you can buy a guy, even the guy himself, from them. So we see from here that if the guy sells himself, you can buy the very essence of the guy. But if one guy sells a guy to another person, you cannot. The guy can only own the Maisa Yadav. But if a guy sells himself to a Yid, the Yid can own him entirely. Says he want to put Achi says, but how do you know that can happen only with money? Maybe it happens when he gets money and he goes through the geirus of becoming an Eved. Only then does it apply. Kashi, good question. Amar Shmuel, says Shmuel, in order to avoid the situation where the Eved takes advantage and he goes to Tefillah and has a mind to become a full-fledged Yid and then becomes free. So what you have to do is with Tzorech, you have to the talk for your mind. What you have to do is you have to make sure that you push him into the water, meaning that you use it, you sort of continue working with him as a slave while he's in the water, so therefore he doesn't have a moment to say that he's free. Kihai, the Binyamin, Abdel Rabashi Binyamin, the slave of Rabashi, he wanted to go to mikveh in order to become a Yid as an Eved. He gave it over to Rabbeinu Rav. So Rabashi gave him over to Rabbeinu Rav. He said to them, Chazal, make sure you see the Menaichu Kaboyle. I want you to know that I am going to demand from you compensation if you allow him to go to Tefillah and become a full-fledged Yid. Ramos, what they did was, they placed Arvisa, they put some kind of a noose, bitzavore, or a leash around his neck. Orfulay, they loosened it, simply they tightened it. Orfulay, they kechle lev chatzitze. When it goes to mikveh, it shouldn't be an intersection. It shouldn't stop the water from coming through. And simtulay, then they tightened it, and they tighten it so that an order shouldn't say that I'm doing this. So that this way they are controlling him in the water. You should say, "Oh, I'm doing it to become a yid." How did the dolidation when it lifted his head from the water? Angele zulta the tin. They gave him a basket full of cement, and Aresh on his head. He said, "Zil, I'm telling him, go bring this to your master's house." So what is he from here? They made sure that he still acted like a slave while he was traveling, so that he shouldn't say that I'm a full-fledged Yid. Okay, have a good night, everybody, and a good Yom Tov. Enjoy your last 2 days of Yom Tov.